right now, Dave Workman from the Seattle Gun Rights Examiner is with us. Dave, good evening, sir.
How you doing, Cam?
I am fired out of a cannon tonight, a cannon that was manufactured in the United States. I don't know if you saw this Wall Street Journal story. I promise you we'll get to Fast and Furious, but I think this ties into Fast and Furious, quite frankly.
Yes, it does.
Have you seen the Wall Street Journal story that's coming out tomorrow? Mexican guns tied to U.S.?
Yep.
All right. They're now saying 70% of 29,284 firearms recovered by authorities in Mexico were traced back to the United States. Dave, do you know how many guns were recovered in Mexico in 2009 and 2010?
I don't have the figure in front of me, but it was a lot more than what they're talking about.
It was 129,243. So they did not submit close to 100,000 firearms for tracing. Once again, we've gone from the myth of the 90% down to the myth of the 70%, but the operative word there is myth.
Yeah. And once again, we are on the verge of something pretty big happening with Project Gunrunner, which it ties into all of this.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. Because look, Senator Feinstein apparently asked acting ATF Director Ken Melson for these figures. He gave them to her. Clearly, the Wall Street Journal, I don't know where Evan Perez got the figures, if it was from Senator Feinstein's office or from the ATF, but apparently he didn't ask, or he didn't feel it was important, or nobody told him what the actual number of firearms seized in Mexico were, because 2 years ago, Dave, when the myth of the 90% blew up, it turns out it was actually closer to like 18% of firearms that were recovered in Mexico were traced back to the United States at one point in time. Now we're looking at, I'm doing the rough math here in my head, but it's right around that same 18% figure, probably a little bit less.
Yeah, typically it's been between 15 and 18 or 19%, and I'll give them some flexibility, maybe a high as 20%, but it has never approached the numbers that they have tried to tell us ever since the Obama administration started going off on this in early 2009. They've been wrong consistently.
Yeah, they have been. And I consistently, and Dave, you have to ask, intentionally?
Oh, yeah. I think that there is a great deal of deliberateness in this. I think also that when you get through all the smoke and mirrors that has been part of this whole story, you're probably going to find some fairly astonishing people that stuff that's going to astonish the average Joe out there, perhaps the average Joe in the media, if they have the intestinal fortitude to face up to this. This has been an incredible story unfolding with this gun runner and with all these percentages. And really, this whole thing started back in early 2009 when they started talking about how 90% of these guns that were being recovered in Mexico were coming from gun shops and gun shows in the United States, and they were primarily targeting gun shops in the southwest United States, the four border states, Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, and California.
Yeah.
This was the root of the Project Gunrunner investigation, and that led to Operation Fast and Furious, operated out of Phoenix, and that led to what is now becoming a debacle for the Obama administration. The hearings that are going to start next week, there's going to be a hearing Monday before Darrell Iss's House Committee on Oversight in Government. What is it?
Government reform. Yeah.
Government reform. Yeah, well, reform is the big word, because I think we're going to see some reforms coming out of this. And one thing I'm going to ask Darrell to reform is the name of that committee. It's just too long to remember. But on Monday, they're going to have three experts explain the authority of the Congress to subpoena information and the responsibility of government to provide that information. Then on Wednesday, the real main event starts. They're going to take testimony from Senator Charles Grassley, the victim of stonewalling in this thing. They're going to take testimony from John Dodson, the whistleblower special agent from ATF who blew the whistle on all of this stuff.
Yeah.
And they're going to take testimony from a couple of other ATF agents, and they're going to hear from the family of murdered Border Patrol agent Brian Terry. Next Monday and next Wednesday are going to be firecracker days in Washington, D.C.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And, I know folks may see the witness list and the name of the hearing on Monday and think, well, congressional subpoenas, that sounds kind of boring. There is a method to this, though, Dave. I mean, this is clearly Chairman Issa spelling out in no uncertain terms to ATF and to DOJ that there are consequences for not complying with a congressional subpoena, that this is not something that is, window dressing or something that is just, all bark and no bite, that a congressional subpoena cannot be ignored, even if you might like to ignore it.
Well, yeah, and the thing that I find fascinating about this, other than the fact that I've been writing about it for the last 4.5, 5 months, what fascinates me now is that Issa has really closed the circle on this, and he's got these guys boxed in. They are issuing subpoenas for people to come and testify. They're going to have them sworn in, and they'll be testifying under oath. If they start fibbing, or if they start trying to do the Potomac two-step around these questions that are going to come up, there are going to be consequences to this. The American public has a right to know what went on with this operation down there. We've got at least one, maybe two dead federal agents that have been tied into guns that were part of this Project Gun Runner that wound up south of the border. The other day, maybe it was yesterday, the Wall Street Journal was reporting how a cache of weapons has been found down in Ciudad Juarez that were traced to Gun Runner. There have been reports, and I published a report like this last week in my column about this raid that took place a couple of weeks ago down there, in which the Mexican helicopter was forced down by gunfire. They recovered about 84 weapons, and some of those weapons were traced back to Gun Runner, and those firearms were recovered out in western Mexico. In the state of Jalisco. I mean, this thing is huge. It's bigger than anybody can imagine. I was talking to one of my sources on Capitol Hill just the other day about this, and he told me, he said, we still don't know how big this thing is, and we think it's bigger than we can imagine. And that got my attention because we still don't have all the answers about this. And I think that's what these hearings are going to start digging into, and we're going to find those answers.
I hope so. I really do. And I'm really looking forward to the hearings next week. Finally a scandal that doesn't involve somebody's Twitter account and their underpants. Honestly, it's my desperate hope that the Washington Press Corps will actually pay attention to a real scandal in the government hearings. I got to tell you, Dave, I'm a little concerned that once again the Washington Press Corps are going to decide that there's some other issue out there that they'd rather cover instead of this legit story. We do have the Wall Street Journal front page story yesterday. I got to tell you, I'm disappointed in that Wall Street Journal story about the myth of the 70%. But clearly, there is becoming. I think you're starting to see more interest in this story among the press. I just hope that they can report it, Dave, in a way that is fair and accurate.
Well, I have a lot of confidence in CBS and Fox News. They're going to be on this because they were on it today. Now, if the other networks don't want to play along, if they want to still waste time with the weenie roast, that's up to them. But this story is going to be out there on at least two networks. I feel confident about that, particularly with the hearings coming up next Wednesday. The Monday hearings, for a lot of people, they may be kind of a yawner. But on Wednesday, that's when the fireworks begin, because the whistleblowers are going to be testifying before ISIS committee. And who can ignore that? Newspapers are going to be there. I bet you the Associated Press is going to be sitting in on that thing. If they're not, I'll be extremely disappointed. And this is a story that I would love to be back there on Capitol Hill to hear those hearings, but I'm not going to be able to get back there, and we're going to be depending on the Washington press corps to really do their job, to man up and get in there and report these facts as they're presented.
Yeah, I hope so. Listen, Dave, I can't thank you enough, sir, for joining us on the program tonight, and I look forward to talking to you about this next week.
Well, I imagine by the time we talk next week, we're going to have a lot to talk about.
I have a feeling you're right. Thank you.
And none of it's going to have to do with wieners or hot dogs or any of that stuff.
I sure hope not. I don't think Anthony Weiner's on the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee. If he is, I'm guessing there's a pretty good chance he may not show up for the meeting next week. But
that'd be my guess too.
Yeah. Thanks again, Dave. We'll talk to you soon.
Always a pleasure, Cam. You take care.
All right, you too, sir. Dave Workman joining us here on Cam and Company.